Josh Palacios had a career night for the Pittsburgh Pirates in a blowout victory over the St. Louis Cardinals. What is the importance of Johan Oviedo moving forward? And Henry Davis heads to the IL, but that could be a good thing for him. More on today's show on Locked On Pirates, brought to you by Bird Dogs.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where I try to bring some positivity to the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Thank you so much for tuning in, as you always do. Again, this show is sponsored by Bird Dogs. Going to talk about them a little bit more later. You can also follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, and opinions of the Pittsburgh Pirates down the stretch of the 2023 season. And, you know, we have to have fun with this team, particularly in the fact that they had fun last night as the Pittsburgh Pirates blew out the St. Louis Cardinals 11-1 on Monday night to kick off their three-game series. Me and Gary tried to tell you guys yesterday that the Cardinals pitching is just, it's not there, folks. And I think this is a major stepping stone for this team. I think it's something that they should be doing when they look at teams that they should be beating. They're beating them. You'll have that same sentiment next week as they face the Kansas City Royals, hopefully. That's a team that the Pirates should beat. And the Cardinals, as currently constructed, are a team that the Pirates should beat. And, of course, the offense took center stage yesterday for the Pittsburgh Pirates, particularly Josh Palacios, or Joshua Palacios, as his mother would like him referred to, as he racked up a career 5 RBIs yesterday. And, man, it was just fun to see him do these things, especially with his brother Richie on the other side of him as well in a St. Louis Cardinals uniform. Of course, Richie had that pinch hit to Josh Palacios in left field on a just nice hard hit single, and the whole Palacios family was there to see the brothers play. Of course, we talked about it earlier this year as well, that the brothers played with each other in the Netherlands for the World Baseball Classic when we had Josh on the show. If you haven't seen that show, make sure you go check that interview out with Joshua. He was a phenomenal guy to have on the show. And you look at those 5 RBIs, and he did it in a very fun way. 3-run home run that made it 8-0. He had a 2-run double that made it 10-1. So pretty much any time that it felt like the game was never really in reach for the St. Louis Cardinals, but any time that it felt like they may even have a sliver of a chance, Joshua Palacios took it out of their hands. And again, as I just mentioned before, Richie had the family in attendance as well for the whole Palacios family, got his pinch hit in the 9th inning. But the offense was nice. I expected the offense to be good here against Drew Rom, who didn't do very well. Their bullpen has also struggled a lot this year. That has been the reason why the St. Louis Cardinals are in the position that they're currently in, because they just quite literally can't pitch. And their offense, which, again, still has some stars on that offense and some young guys like Mason Wynn and Jordan Walker and then Tommy Edman, among some other names, the pitching's just been so bad for this Cardinals team that they can't overcome it. And that's something that's scary for them moving forward. Now, obviously, the Cardinals spend a lot more than the Pirates do. I'm sure they're going to definitely shore up some things in the offseason with how pitching will go. But for the Pirates last night, pitching was kind of on the back burner because of how well the offense played. But I want to talk about it because I think the pitching last night from Bailey Falter and Thomas Hatch was very, very good, particularly in the area that they held Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt hitless in the game last night. And they went 0 for 5 with a strikeout. So that's really something you like to see from those two guys. And Andrew Kisner was the only person for the Cardinals to score a run. He had a solo shot off of Bailey Falter. But Thomas Hatch and Bailey Falter was very nice to see last night because I expected with Thomas Hatch coming in, I didn't know Bailey Falter was going to be the guy coming in after him. And I surely didn't believe that Bailey Falter was going to be the guy to stay in for all 6 innings and pitch 6 innings of work with only 1 earned run. But man, Hatch did a very good job. He attacked the zone last night. He did very good things. He didn't strike out too many guys, but he only allowed 2 hits over the 3 innings. He walked 1 batter, but he was going right at the Cardinals' opposing hitting. He just was doing it. He had no gripes about anything in terms of what he was throwing in the zone. And we've seen some pretty good things so far from Thomas Hatch. He did very well against that strong Atlanta Braves lineup. You could say what you want about this Cardinals team and how bad they are, but it's still a scary lineup when it features Goldschmidt, Arenado, and then Mason Wynn, Jordan Walker, and Tommy Edman, among other names. But Bailey Falter, I think, was the bigger surprise of the two here, going 6 innings of one-run baseball. Of course, this was his 10th. He picked up his first win finally. He has 10 starts on the year. This was not considered a start since he came in after Hatch. But to pick up your first win after 10 starts finally is a huge thing for him. And ironically, Bailey Falter's last MLB victory came on August 20th of last year. So it had been a full calendar year in between victories for Bailey Falter, which is not something that you want to say about a pitcher, but it's one of those cool stats that you bring up that's like, oh, okay, so when August 20th or 21st or 22nd rolls around and Bailey Falter's pitching, odds are he's probably going to win for all of my people on FanDuel. If you want to go bet on the Pirates around that time of year next year, if Bailey Falter's on this team or if Bailey Falter's on another team and he's pitching in that time period, make sure you do that. And ironically as well, he pitched 6 innings of 1-run baseball in that game a year ago. So something about August 20th and August 21st for Bailey Falter in his MLB career the last 2 years. But what I really liked about Falter last night is you don't really see him as a strikeout guy, but he was striking out the Cardinals at will last night. He had 8 strikeouts over 6 innings in that game last night. He hasn't seen that mark since July 29th of last year. So that was very, very important for him to see. For him to finally get some swings and misses because he is a pitch to contact guy historically. And that's what you really like to see. And for all intents and purposes about this game last night, it was an all-around performance. Thomas Hatch and Bailey Falter did phenomenally. There we go. And they could have just went out there and threw whatever, but they said, no, we have a big lead. We're going to hold this big lead. And of course, if you watched the show yesterday, Gary and myself said the Pirates should be able to do this against the St. Louis Cardinals pitching. There's nothing saying that they shouldn't be able to do this against them. True Rom has not been good for them this year. And the pitcher they see tonight, although a boogeyman in our minds, as Gary alluded to yesterday, not so much a boogeyman to this team because he hasn't really seen a lot of these guys play. And that's Adam Wainwright, who has an 8.42 ERA right now for the St. Louis Cardinals in his swan song season. And he's given up 4 or more earned runs in 6 of his last 8 starts. So all signs point for the Pirates to have another big, high-powered offense night. Now, the question is Johan Oviedo going to pitch well also? Because this is a Cardinals offense that's not just going to lay down and score 1 run a game. Now, if they do, then that's just good pitching from the Pittsburgh Pirates, and we'll take that all day. Ironically about this start for Waino, his first start against Pittsburgh this season, his last start, of course, against the Pirates coming of October 2nd of last year. That was his last start of the season in the last series of the season. And in his last start, he allowed 6 runs and only struck out 4. I think that's something that could be very much in the cards tonight. And something that I would like Derek Shelton to do tonight, I know he won't, but it's something I'd like him to do. Run the lineup back from last night. Let those guys go back out there and have fun swinging the bats like they were last night and really enjoy what they were doing. And, of course, Adam Wainwright will face Johan Oviedo, who we will talk about here in just a moment. But I want to let you guys know about the wonderful people over at Bird Dogs. Make sure you visit birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or use promo code LockedOnMLB to get a free tech hat with any purchase. I have the tech hat. It's really awesome. I love it. Bird Dogs also make you look good. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. And Bird Dogs fix this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. And Bird Dog uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb or enter promo code LockedOnMLB for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or promo code LockedOnMLB for a free white tech hat. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. We're going to talk a little bit more about Johan Oviedo and his importance for the starting pitching staff heading into 2024 here in just a moment. All right, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast. This is segment 2 of today's episode. And by the way, everydayers, thank you so much for tuning into this show, as you always do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Also, if you want to listen to the hometown broadcast of the Pittsburgh Pirates this year, make sure you do so on the Sirius XM app. That's SXM. To listen to the hometown broadcast of the Pittsburgh Pirates down the stretch of the 2023 MLB season as we near the end of August and head to the final month of September. It's time to start looking forward a little bit. Now, of course, the Pittsburgh Pirates are not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, but we all know the harsh reality that they will miss the playoffs yet again and have not made the playoffs since 2015. Now, all signs to this go towards 2024, where the front office has stated that they want to spend money. And improvements obviously need to be made on the squad. They are a well below 500 baseball team that saw flashes in April and fell off since then. But we've seen good things this year. And one of those good things is the starter of tonight's game, Johan Oviedo. Now, what's interesting about Oviedo is last year we got our first taste of Johan Oviedo. Of course, he was acquired in the Jose Quintana trade, and so far with the way he's pitched, that trade has worked out very well for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And before the season began, I mean, I'm not going to say that he was an afterthought as far as the rotation goes, but with what was going to be available if everybody was healthy, it probably would have been difficult to justify putting Johan Oviedo in the starting rotation. But then you look at the injuries of JT Brubaker. You look at the injury to Vince Velasquez, Michael Burrows, who I expected to be in this rotation and be one of the better young arms for the Pittsburgh Pirates this year. The departure of Rich Hill, of course, at the trade deadline, and the assignments of Luis Ortiz and Rowanzi have all given Johan Oviedo more than enough of a shot to be in the starting rotation moving forward. And realistically, he's had his struggles. He had his struggles in April. Again, we all remember watching him in April, especially that Red Sox game where he gave up like 5 runs and then the Pirates came back, or the Pirates were winning by like 4 runs and then gave up 5 and then came back again. That was kind of what Oviedo was. Now, Oviedo has become a very reliable starter in this rotation. And before his start tonight, he has a 4.05 ERA in his last 7 starts, including a 1.15 WHIP. Those are numbers you'll take in a starting rotation, especially run right now, where you're having a bullpen game every once in a while, or almost every couple days at this point, just because you don't have anything else available at your disposal right now. And Johan Oviedo has been a very consistent pitcher for this staff so far. Outside of Mitch Keller, he's been arguably the most consistent. And he's made 25 starts up to today. 26 will be tonight. And that's just one shy of his career total since debuting in 2020. So when he makes his start tonight, he will have tied the amount of starts that he made in 2020, 2021, and 2022 combined. It's very good. That means the workload is there. That means he's able to handle the workload of a full season by a starting pitcher. His 12 quality starts, by the way, are also second on the team behind Mitch Keller, 8 more than his combined 2021 and 2022 totals. Now, of course, a lot of these numbers are going to be drastically higher because this is like his first full year being a full-flown starter in St. Louis. He was kind of like a long relief arm. He would have starts here and there for the St. Louis Cardinals. And for the Cardinals, you have to be kicking yourself trading away a guy like this who is now come into his own, because pitching has been their biggest issue. And you've seen the pitchers and the players that the Cardinals have moved on from via trade this year and in past years in the trades that we've seen. But with this being his first full season as a starter, I've seen things that have proven that he can be a very quality starter. I've seen things that have been worrisome, like the early inning issues that he's had throughout the year, or just the blow-up innings that he'll allow at times. But the biggest question coming into the remainder of this season and going into 2024 is, can Johan Oviedo stay this reliable starter? Can he continue to be this very reliable starter for the Pittsburgh Pirates going into next year? Because if he finishes strong, I mean, there's no doubt that he's going to be in the rotation probably anyway right now, just with how things are looking with Luis Ortiz and Roansy Contreras. But as we know, they've said that they want to spend money. In the past 3 off seasons, they've went out and got starting pitching in the off season. So you know that they're going to bring somebody in. You know you're going to have guys like Paul Skeens, who will likely be in the rotation by May or late May, early June next year, depending on when Super 2 or whenever they can get that extra year of control is. So you know that Skeens is going to be there. So that gives you Mitch Keller, Paul Skeens, and Johan Oviedo. Who do you have after that? Do you trust Roansy up to that point next year? Do you trust Luis Ortiz up to that point next year? Is Quinn Priester ready to come back and do some good things next year? Is Jared Jones going to be ready? None of these guys are going to be ready right at the beginning of the year, I don't think. So you're realistically looking at Mitch Keller and Johan Oviedo to start the year, which then means the importance on Johan Oviedo is going to be there. He is going to have to be a guy that solidifies his spot in this rotation, but also solidifies himself as a reliable pitcher. And that's something that I think the Pirates are going to need from him down the stretch of this season. And that starts tonight. He needs to have a strong end to the season, because you look at what the Pirates want to do in free agency, they're going to have to get starting pitching. You're going to have to get at least one starting pitcher. We know that. The free agents are there. You're going to have to get at least one starting pitcher at free agency or via trade. I am more open to the trade possibility, because I think there's just more available in that possibility if you do trade one of these middle infielders or any of these number of prospects that you have. But you feel a lot better about the rotation than you do right now if Johan Oviedo does perform well and they go out and sign a pretty good starter in free agency. But a lot of that hinges on Johan Oviedo finishing the season strong and looking like a very good starting pitcher. That's just where it sits right now. And we could all be blatantly honest here. If Oviedo was in another rotation that was not as in flux as the Pirates are, name any team that's in the playoff race that has a good starting rotation, Oviedo's probably a back of the rotation starter, which is fine. Because if you tell me that the Pirates figure this out with the starting pitching next year and Johan Oviedo is your 5th starter, that signals a very good pitching staff to me, because then you're looking at some point next year, I think you're going to be looking at hopefully a solid free agent starting pitcher or a trade acquisition that's going to be there longer than past the trade deadline. Mitch Keller, Paul Skeens, Johan Oviedo, and Jared Jones, just to name a few guys. Jared Jones is one of those guys. Anthony Solometo could make the jump. But you feel really good about that rotation if Johan Oviedo continues to do what he's doing. Now, again, not lighting the world on fire. He's not like an unbeatable starting pitcher by any means. He's not been Mitch Keller all-star level. We've seen flashes of Johan Oviedo having very good runs of things like he has over his last 7, but he still has a 4 ERA over his last 7 starts. So if you have a 4 ERA guy over your past 7 starts and he's your 5th starter in your rotation at some point next year, that's very, very good. And you can really start ringing some bells in the NL Central. But Oviedo has to finish this season strong. He has to continue to do what he's doing, and he has to solidify himself in this rotation. Are the Pirates going to have a choice to put him out of the rotation? Probably not. But you would much rather feel better about having Mitch Keller and Johan Oviedo to start your season and then figure out the other spots via free agency or trade or call up and not put everything on the plates of these young guys. Now, a guy who's had a lot on his plate this year is Henry Davis, and we're going to talk about him here in just a moment as he heads to the IL. But could it be a good thing for him? Not the injury part, but the break. Could that be good for Henry Davis? Talk about that in just a moment. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, as you always do. It is Tuesday, August 22nd. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I can never express how much you guys mean to me. I know I struggle sometimes with the schedule, but next week you're going to have Gary Morgan on the show quite a bit. We're going to talk about that on Friday because I'm going to share something with you guys that has been going on that would probably justify some of that stuff. But on the final segment of today's show, we're going to talk about Henry Davis heading to the IL. Of course, ahead of yesterday's contest, Vinny Capra, not Jared Triolo, not Nick Gonzalez, was recalled yesterday. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, as well as talking about Game 2 of this series against the Cardinals and what can happen in Game 3. But per MLB.com, it was a right-hand strain for Henry Davis heading to the IL. Of course, it's centering around his thumb. He has said that. He has dealt with it reportedly for a while. Jason Mackey talked to him on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and he would not clarify how long it has been lingering with him. But for Davis, the injury is unfortunate. You don't like seeing players get injured. And, of course, over the 16 games that he's had in August, Davis just hasn't looked good. 57 at-bats. He's slashing 158, has a 248 on base and a 248 slugging, equating to a 492 OPS. Just unplayable numbers. That's all that really speaks to. He does have a homer this month, 6 RBIs, 19 strikeouts, and 7 walks. Now, when I say this, I'm not trying to say that the injury is good. The IL stint is good for the fact that he can get a break. I think that's the biggest thing that I look at here for Henry Davis. And he's had a lot on his plate for being a rookie. I mean, he's had to learn right field, which is where he's primarily played. He's been in the batting cages a lot. He's been in the bullpen a lot, trying to learn how to catch. And he's trying to learn how to hit against Major League pitching. All of this in a rookie season, and he was one of the fastest call-ups in MLB history. It's very tough for a kid to try to learn all that stuff all at the same time. Now, the injury could be a big reason why he was struggling this month. That's very possible. But we all know that Henry Davis is very talented. And the kid, I mean, he hasn't seen more than however many at-bats that he has this year at the major league level. He has an entire career ahead of him, folks. And he was selected number 1 overall 2 years ago as the first draft pick in my Locked On Pirates era for a large part of the fact that he could hit the baseball as a catcher. And is he going to eventually be a catcher? Who knows? Endy Rodriguez right now looks way better catching than Henry Davis has. It's just the truth. But that doesn't mean that Endy Rodriguez is a better player than Henry Davis. That doesn't mean that both of them can't be very good players. And you could be upset about how Davis was marketed and how we've heard that he was going to catch more after the deadline, and he really hasn't. That's just on fault of the front office for straight up lying to you. But there are going to be plans to have Henry Davis catch. It's something that you can do. But as I've said on this show hundreds of times, if the bat plays, which for Henry Davis, I do think the bat is going to play at some point when he figures out Major League pitching, you got to put him somewhere. And he can play right field. He's not been terrible out there. He's been bad out there, but he's not been terrible. And next year, as I said on the show yesterday, I'd love to see him DH. I think DHing for Davis would be one of the best things for him. And put Kutch out there in right field. We know Kutch knows how to play the outfield, but put Kutch out there every couple days. Let Henry DH in between so his bat stays hot if it's coming out of the lineup and he keeps his confidence. That's something that I could see in the future for Henry Davis. It's something that I think is fruitful for him. And it's something that I've thought about ad nauseum, about having one of Endy Rodriguez or Henry Davis DH and have Kutch be a part-time guy as a DH or a right fielder. Because Kutch is only getting older. He still looks good, but he's only getting older. So you need to prioritize these guys because Andrew McCutchen's not going to win you a playoff game. He might now, but he's not going to be the reason you make a playoff push next year. Henry Davis, Endy Rodriguez, Paul Skeens, Jared Jones, Leover Peguero, O'Neal Cruz, Key Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, those are the guys that are going to be the reason the Pirates attempt to make a playoff push next year. So, again, albeit it's an injury, it sucks for it being an injury. The Pirates are holding him back from hitting for a couple days so his thumb can heal. But this should be a good break for Henry Davis. It's a break that he needs. It's been a loaded rookie season for him. He's dealt with a lot already. He's had to learn multiple positions while also trying to learn how to hit opposing pitching. Folks, that is hard to do. I mean, even look at Nick Gonzalez. All he had to do was focus on playing the middle infield and hit, and he couldn't even figure it out yet. Quinn Priester was just pitching and couldn't figure it out yet. So imagine trying to learn how to do 3 different things all at once in your first 2 months on the job. It's very difficult. So I think, again, it's going to be fruitful for him. He is eligible at the earliest to return next Wednesday against the Kansas City Royals in the finale of that series. I would expect him to return that day. I don't think the thumb injury is going to keep him out for too long, but I do think the week or week and a half off for him is going to be very fruitful for him. And I think he's only going to come back stronger, and the bat is going to light things up. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network on Tuesday, August 22nd. My name is Ethan Smith. Make sure you follow me right there at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates over on the Twitter machine. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Check out my game recap later tonight over at Inside the Bucks Basement. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. My name is Ethan Smith, and I will see you on the flip side.